Okay, move on then, K-2 tablet initiative. So this is our rediscussion of the Apple iPad. And I think some of this is back, Paul, could you ask questions on using it instead of actually using or something?
Well, I have concerns about going in with a pilot, and there are a couple of things I was looking for. One is Apple has a fine product, and one of the best things they have is their touch screens. They do an excellent job on their touch screens.
The hardware,
The hardware itself, the ability to point and expand, their touch screens are great. But I think the products are kind of expensive, and I'm just looking for more answers for what are we going to use these for. And it seemed like we were buying half tablets and half infrastructure to support those tablets. Half the money was going into other than things going into students' hands. So my question back was, what applications are we going to run on these, and is the iPad the only solution for running those applications? And how much infrastructure do we need to have in order to have those devices in the students' hands? And then there's a follow-on to that saying, all right, if this is a pilot, how do we know that we're making some type of progress that we should continue with this pilot?
I guess I'll address the infrastructure piece, and that is the piece that I emailed you guys, and it hasn't changed since the last month, and that's the Casper program. That's the one, again, it allows us to create profiles on these devices. So for example, if it's a first grade or a kindergarten device, we can set all those settings ahead of time. It lets us mass deploy everything so that we don't have to individually set the Wi-Fi, individually set the date, and all that good stuff. So it just makes it more efficient process to roll out the devices. It also allows us to kind of monitor where are the devices as far as their updates, are they kept up as far as being patched and up to date and ready to go. Also lets us kind of, we obviously don't want students to go into the settings and do all those things while there's instruction going on. So it allows us to kind of monitor that and lock some of those settings down. Also gives the teachers more control if they're doing a lesson with them. They have this, part of that software is, it's called Focus. It comes with it, and it allows the student, or allows the teacher to say, okay, students, we're just going to be looking at this one particular app that we're working on, and everything else is shut off, and they kind of can do that. They can kind of have control over those pieces. Really, it's that maintenance, I guess, three different things. I mean, for us as a tech department, rolling it out efficiently, and then giving more control as far as to the teacher, how the devices are going to be used, and then just to make sure that these devices are maintained and are up to date. So, and again, that cost is a 3-year cost. So that $1,215 is that 3-year cost for the 45 devices. And again, the next piece is that training piece. They bring a professional on site to train our whole team, the tech team, kind of how do we maintain this after they're gone, and go through a specific 2-day training on the whole process. The other piece is the Mass 360. Again, it gives us even more control should these devices, should they leave the district somehow, and we have that control where if they leave, we know exactly where they are. Should we need to wipe them, make them unusable, those kinds of things, it gives us that added piece of management on there. So that's what this software is.
Let me know what you have anyways right now. Find my iPhone or find my
They do. You just can't remote wipe it necessarily should they get stolen. I haven't seen it.
With your iPhone, I know that. So
okay, I haven't seen that piece. You might be right.
So I looked after this, and I looked and see, and I cannot find a good app that if it was offline, then you could have a supervisory control lock on other items on the desktop. I'll call it a desktop. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't find any other than the product you're talking about.
Right, this gives us that control. And again, this was recommended in that any new features that come out from Apple as far as their operating system, this company is pretty much right in hand with that. So they're right, whenever something's released, these guys have access to it. So we'd be right on top of whatever kind of different features they push out, and we can control that from that point.
I mean, I'm not sold on the, all the other laptops going along with this. And here's my question, is like you can load these things, other than the software program you call out, having one supervisor computer to load it. But once you got your update and you got your apps loaded, you don't need an update on your product if it's working fine. For example, if you know that you've got something working on an XP computer, it works perfectly, upgrading it to a Windows 7 64-bit could kill everything you have. So upgrading, and this happens all the time with Apple, upgrading to the newest revision kills everything you have. All of a sudden you're upgrading every single one of your apps and all the other problems. But if you already have the existing app and the app's working perfectly, I don't see where we're upgrading these, other than once a year at summertime.
You're right. I think the piece, though, we need to remember is, I think, especially with the one-to-one laptops, one piece we were very strong on is what are these, these devices being used to? Where are they not able to go to? We want to restrict some of the bad sites or etc. on those. So again, this will give us that management piece.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll give us that control.
But you need that one laptop to do that.
The one laptop will, to start out, will sync all of these absolutely to push out that configuration that first time as well.
Okay.
And then,
so the individual laptops that are going to be with the grouping in the teacher's area, I guess my question is, what are those going to be, other than you said you can wipe everything except for one icon or something?
right, and then at the very top, the 3 machines, we originally had one per classroom. Those are for the teachers to create content, the MacBook Airs, to allow them to create digital books, which they can also publish out to the market that kids will be able to download to these devices, so they can create digital content through iBooks. And so it allows them to kind of create and content and share with their class and colleagues as well.
I think we reduced the quantity.
We did. We had one per room, I believe, and we went down to just 3 just to kind of give it a...
One per building.
Yeah.
Yeah, so other than the digital book thing, you ever got a good sale for me for that one? I mean, because right now that doesn't really explain to me, because right now we don't use digital books. And teachers creating digital books for the sole person to buy these 3 computers extra to do that. If we don't actually have a plan set in place to actually do that, I don't see where they're going to get much more of the dust accumulating on them. I agree with the main supervisory one, because you can limit all the iPads and lock them out or lock them down. But I don't see, I do agree with, by the way, the Apple TV linking up to the projection, because those are fairly inexpensive and they're very easy to link. Touch one little button on the screen, it links right up to it, there it is.
Absolutely.
But other than that, I haven't really seen a need for the other computers right
Well, there are other solutions to do similar things. Now,
I guess my question first is that you're not sold on Apple.
I'm not sold on Apple. I'm not. Apple did a wonderful job in selling Apple IIs, Apple IIes, Apple IIcs, and we had lots of them in this district until we said, well, PCs are what's being used out in the industry. And all of a sudden, we kind of shelved all the Apple products and went to PCs. And now we're heading towards tablets, but now we're back into the Apple world. And I'm interested. I would be interested to hear how this company would view having all these different technology layers now, as opposed to the idea of having something that is more web-based, like you've been talking about.
Yeah, but I don't see kindergarten using a web-based product. I mean, unless there's some unknown app we don't know about, and the Apple thing that this is locked down. And the educational apps are just astounding. Nobody makes more apps than Apple does.
The other piece also on the marketplace, in Apple, there's a stringent approval process before an app can be published. On the Android market, anybody can push an app out there and send it out. It's not necessarily controlled and gone through a stringent process to review as well. So I guess just to keep that in mind.
But I mean, I'm not opposed to using the Apples a little greater. I think it's a completely standalone thing versus a computer like everything else. And the younger kids are so used to them anyways right now. You know, so I guess that doesn't bother me. What I'd rather do is see more of the actual iPads enhance the kids. I guess that's what I'd rather see, but
The question is.
And
what
your
apps-
second, I'm sorry, Paul, the second question you asked also in your emails, you mentioned, you know, what are we doing for benchmarks, you know, what are we kind of looking at with these devices? So Kathy and I met, had a brief conversation, we just kind of went through, for the preschool and kindergarten range, we were looking at using benchmark assessments of PALS for the literacy piece, and then you can explain that one, I'm not sure that one is.
Sure. And for early math assessment, EDMA, it's an early diagnostic math assessment. And then we're going to be using some specific tools with preschool that will have some ability to do some benchmark assessing. And then as we looked up in the grades, you know, when we get to first and second grade, we could do some parent surveys, teacher surveys, student surveys for impact, as well as look at the academics, because that's what Tammy was talking about, looking at both the anecdotal pieces, the qualitative versus the quantitative pieces of student achievement too.
I also question the technology standards for each grade, and would that be another measure of achieving those or greater access to those?
Absolutely.
currently what is in place in our K-2?
We actually have some of the blue Toshibas, actually that we have 30 in this upper grade, so we're planning on giving, haven't got them all done yet, but just having some access to those as well as some of the remaining ones. But otherwise it's the desktops that are down there in the breakout rooms, just like in the other areas.
Okay, so they have laptops out there, of course, but they're really
And there's
necessary. There's no way to lock them out.
There's
No.
no
No.
laptops in the K-2?
I'm sorry, we were hoping to get those extra blue ones to them.
Oh.
It's not there yet.
Yeah, I think we discussed that at all. Thought we had a number of blue ones that were down, and we were supposed to transfer all blue ones to fifth, sixth.
They are. Any extras that we had, we were thinking about doing it, and we haven't done that. Just for that increased access, but then this discussion came up, so.
Okay, well, let's stick to this discussion, because I don't think we want to muddy the waters by putting the little Toshibas down there.
Okay.
I mean, they can't last through 7th and 8th graders. I don't know how they're going to make it through kindergartners.
Sure. But otherwise, it's the desktops is what they have.
The desktop.
The desktops in the breakout areas.
Okay,
So,
all right, and we're thinking of getting rid of the desktops, is this correct?
In K-2?
I thought that our desktops were outdated, outmoded.
they were, we just took the memory from the upper grades that we took out and pushed them down into the.
And did that suffice?
It's a Band-Aid, it's helping for the time being, but
Okay. So I guess the question is for the principals, the current programs they use on the desktops, are there similar programs that can be utilized on the Apples or the iPads in the rooms so that the kids wouldn't have to go out to breakout areas?
I don't know, the breakout areas, so
Yeah,
it's a little bit different.
You got them in the rooms, right?
We have four in 2 classrooms and the rest all have 5
Okay.
workstations.
I mean, I can't say whether there's going to be similar apps that's comparable, but I'm going to think just by, this is just a big intuitive guess that the Apple products, the newer things are going to be, the apps are going to be much stronger, user-friendly than some of the things we presently have that aren't always running at its best and highest performance.
Okay.
I would think we would be able to put anything that they're currently using and really liking onto the screen also of the iPad, like make a shortcut to the screen.
I guess, all to you again. Other than that, any suggestion that you can lock out, got a pretty good base of those. I mean, Android's obviously coming out with apps, but I don't know for short term, I don't know the easiest way to lock down any kind of tablet device for a K or two.
Many years ago, I was on the West Dallas School Board, and we were supposed to approve textbooks. And I asked the question, is there some other district that is using these, and is there a reference, something that says that they have had improvements, that they've shown documented improvement? And they looked at me like, really? You want us to actually go out and ask the question, is somebody else using these and having success with it? Yeah. I think that that's a reasonable thing to ask. We wanted to actually use, I don't always want to be the leader. I don't want to be on the bleeding edge. In some cases, I don't mind following a little bit, because sometimes the leaders go off a cliff. So I don't want to be that place. So let us, I just don't feel comfortable with making a fairly sizable investment in a pilot program without some feeling that this device is not just going to be a device that is new and swaying and provides a new way to babysit these kids. We're talking about is education, and so we need to just get this idea across. How is it going to be used, and how are we going to measure that it's effective? I don't think that's
Well, right
a real
now,
thing.
right now I have to say that Mrs. Shepke, our tech integrator, is working with the teachers who've been identified. I mean, we're looking to identify teachers that this is to go through, and so she's meeting with them on a regular basis now to talk about how they will use this instructionally. And Sarah, in her own background in doing a lot of research, is very strong in making sure that things are academically focused and keeping in that way. Teachers are looking to attend some workshops that will help them with identifying programs that are good. But again, how much work should they put into moving forward when they're not sure? I mean, they're starting the process of the conversation.
What I'm saying is that you should have some idea of what is needed by the students, and that's an academic, need. And you don't buy the part, buy the computer, and look for uses for it. You have a need, and you fulfill that need. And whether it's with Apple or some other method, if it's an abacus, it's an abacus. You have to have something to say, I have this need, and here's how I'm going to fill it. Not, let's get these whiz-bang devices, and now let's find some way to plug it in.
I think, Paul, maybe one of the needs, if I could just, when you take a look at the learner that's coming to our buildings at a younger age, the need is the engagement piece. I think we have the expertise to figure out, like you were asking, the educational component of what we're going to use and what programs could be, but the challenge, I think, for us as educators is these kids are already using this stuff in their life before they arrive at us. When they're coming to us and we're not providing, once again, these tools, and these are all instructional tools. I don't care if you got the black, the white, the blue, and the red out there. They're all instructional tools. We have to provide opportunities for these kids to come to be engaged in the academics with the tools that are available, that some of them are already using at their home. And if we're not staying up with what they're using in their homes, that puts us one step backwards, I believe, at meeting the needs of these kids as they are already doing that in their environment. So
what are they using for them in their home? I've got grandkids, and what I see is they're playing a game on it.
But many times when you look at gaming and you look at the new, and today they didn't even present that type of stuff here, but even some of the research we're doing in our building, and you've seen the University of Wisconsin's been in with Jenny Henskin in the science rooms, with some of the ways that you are using gamings and different things like that to help kids learn, help them become engaged in the learning process. And like you said, they're just doing these games, but many times games are ways that kids learn nowadays. It's different. I can only speak for myself and how I learned. I learned in a very rote way. That's not the way kids learn nowadays. So as you see the games, do we have games? No, I think we have educational type of ways and things. Once again, and I'm not up to date on what we would be putting on the iPads because I'm on the other end of moving them this way. I just think when you ask, what are we going to be doing educationally, the key thing for us, number one, is how are we going to engage these kids that are coming? Because if we can't engage them, we're not even going to be able to, they're not going to be learning because they're going to be bored.
Examples of what I see, people using their own iPads in the classroom. And one is using them for reading reinforcement of students who are struggling with beginning sound, letter identification. They're using various apps that reinforce that and give them practice with interactive kinds of materials. Another teacher has a station in her room when she attended one of Sarah's workshops that talked about that our students in 3rd grade would have to be stronger at keyboarding for the new Smarter Balance test in the coming year. She took her iPad and set up a station where she is using, she's used her iPad for a keyboarding station, so as the kids are learning their letters, they're also learning to do keyboarding of the letters. So those are just 2 examples of what I see teachers using. In fact, there's a 3rd teacher who's bringing her own into the classroom. I see more teachers bringing them into the classroom for practice of skills, for enrichment of learning, because there are just so many learning resources on them that keep students interactive and engaged, especially for students who struggle with independent learning. They are more engaged when they're in that interactive mode than just sitting doing a worksheet where they're not as engaged, they're not always at task as much as they are. So those are just some examples right now. And those are really small examples, but things I see. I wish I could give you more specifics at the moment of what exact programs, but I don't have that.
It's nice from a parent point of view as well, because there are so many families that do have the iPad device, so that I know when my wife and I's 1st grader is coming home and we're getting communication from the teacher as to what program we can use on our own iPad at home, and to see that he's immediately familiar with that program, is immediately able to reinforce the concepts that were taught during the lesson, is beneficial to him once he returns back to school as well. So there is a communicative part of the iPad because of its prevalency in so many of our homes as well.
I would particularly like to see, and I would advocate from a curriculum instruction standpoint, that the devices are used for creativity, for communication, and for critical thinking. I was looking at some iPad apps, just general apps, that you could get on either device, so it wasn't device specific, that students could be writing stories and making choices, and then it creates a book for them in the end because of the choices of the character and the theme and some of those kind of pieces. So they're putting that together. I would like to see more of that, where students are creating pieces that cause thinking, that excel the Common Core, help them with their writing and communication skills. Certainly we've used it some for repetition of skills and things like that, but any device can do those things. Many of the applications that are out there for the iPad, you can quickly use because of the size and the camera and the ability to even record. That I've seen kindergarten students recording, even making something with blocks, recording what it is, telling a story, and then using Dragon dictation to click the button and it puts the words in so that they're right away seeing that their words are, printed word. And so I'm more of an advocate of pieces in which the kids are using it to create something or to communicate, because I think those are some of the skills that are really essential for kids in life. Those are literacy skills, and they're also work skills.
I guess I'm looking at this differently. I'm looking at this as a trial test for those individual rooms that are chosen to do a pilot as a replacement device for the PC. I mean, the PCs are going away pretty quickly.
And that's how I started last year with asking about that initial conversation, because that was, as we talked about that the PCs were going, I asked, would you be interested in consider tablets as a way to replace those because of where we were? So that was, and at the time you said, yeah, we would think about that. And so that's, from the summer conversation, that's where it came to, let's begin to see how we can use those, because that's exactly right where we were going.
Yeah. Because at the time, I remember I brought up, it would be nice if the PTOs had initiatives to do that technology type fundraising, because originally this was a PTO in this district. Their main focus was on district-wide technology. So, but that's what we started off this whole thing. It was basically a replacement trial of these. Now, what I'm anticipating, that means is the people that have this trial are not sending the students out into the breakout area. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, until we have those conversations, like this is where we're going, this is what we're thinking about. I mean, we haven't, it's a 50-50. I mean, you can put all this hour and work into doing it, but I mean, in concept, we have to know, okay, are we moving forward on this? So we'll spend the hours and time and training that Sarah will, but if we're not going in.
When I hear the people are presenting and they're saying, you know, we need to look at this as more of a cloud-based system or, you know, web-based system, and not Apple-specific, not, you know, not device-specific. I thought that's kind of the direction. What happened to Moodle? You know, we heard Moodle for years, and all of a sudden, I
We
haven't
would
been hearing that.
training for K-2.
No, yeah, I don't,
That's teaching for
it's a little bit more geared towards our upper grade students.
Moodle all the time with kids
All
in
the time.
grades.
Yeah, Moodle is more of a replacement of your textbook, the interaction thereof,
Okay.
versus this is more replacement of a device to have for instant access to students at younger
They're
grades.
using it quite a bit in 5th and 6th grade now too, aren't they?
Yes.
Mhm.
I don't know how it, I don't
I'm
see that.
seeing the grandkids come up, you know, they stay at my house all the time, and, you know, they weren't, the one wasn't in Foxford until this year, and she's already telling me about it, and I'm like, what?
Moodle's, remember, Paul, Moodle's the instructional platform where the instruction's delivered from, through the tool. And I don't know if we're looking at a kindergarten, first grade with an instructional platform right now. I think as Mrs. Hoppy says, we're looking more with the creativity, the communication, the repetitive things that take place that we need with some of the remediation that needs to take place, not the instructional platform for all. That's what we get as we move up to the higher grades.
But it should be an integrated solution that ties in with the rest of it.
I think eventually, as you're moving into 3rd, 4th, 5th, absolutely, you need to phase that in. But right now, I think we're talking those younger first year grades, kindergarten. I think I heard.
All of the things that we were just told about, that we have to be able to have it integrated so that there's some instant
Right.
response back, some measure of it. I'm just not seeing it. I'm seeing it as, oh, here's a cool little toy that the kids are going to have fun with. You know?
Well, we're hoping they're going to have fun because learning's fun, Paul. We're hoping.
Well, and here's the problem with Paul. You can say that you don't learn from games, but here's the problem is, oh, my youngest one won some kind of spelling bee in the room or something. I think it was middle school, and he had to answer it or something. And he blurted out this location, and it had to do with social studies, or something in the Middle East or something. And somehow he won the spelling thing because of that. He came home and, see, Dad, I told you my game's helped me. And he was playing Rome, Instant War, and building his little things and all these castles. And well, he figured out something in the Middle East that was named this, and knew what the whole layout of the city was and everything. What year in AD it was and everything else. So apparently I got to look at that now. It needs to do work. But I tell you this, the other thing is from the get-go, I had things like, not Magic Treehouse, but the other one, there's some other treehouse thing. No, but it was some other one, it was something Treehouse Adventure. Anyway, back when you had to figure out your DMA, so they merge and live and everything on your computer. But anyways, I had all the games for the kids, starting out with pre-K, kindergarten, all the way up to like 6th grade. They made these programs for the computer. The problem is they don't make those programs for the PC anymore. They make apps, and they're assuming you're going to have a tablet of some sort. And that's the issue. And also, it's a completely learning device that tells you everything about the students learn. So you can utilize that. The issue comes down to is, do we feel that that on Android is something we want to allow? Right now, I'm saying no. You cannot lock that Android down like you can everything else.
I think going back to what Shirley said earlier, 8 out of the 9 teachers that are potential pilot teachers, they're bringing their own. They're bringing their own, and they're nervous about using what they're using because they know it's good, and they're using activities, things that Shirley had mentioned. And so Sarah did meet briefly with the teachers, and again, not to put too much time into planning because we don't know which direction we're going. She's ready to go, but she has kind of held back a little until we decide what direction we're going. But I think it's a real testament to that. To the teachers, they're already trying it out, bringing their personal iPad and using it with the students.
I have a few questions. We're talking about a $40,000 expense. And is this expense covered in our budget?
Yes, I budgeted the $51,000, which was the original price tag from a couple weeks ago.
And Cameron, are you suggesting that the iPad is the best to use? Do you have an alternate for us to consider as the iPad?
I honestly, if you look at what the teacher's knowledge base is, you look at what the apps and things that are available, coupled with the fact that it's very stringent on what kind of apps can go out into the market, I honestly do believe this is the way to go. Coupled with a lot of resources around the area with districts that are already using iPads, so we can definitely pull from that as well. I had a tough time. I asked my colleagues, who's using Android, and they're not that we necessarily have to, go that route, but nobody. It was iPads in the area. So I honestly think, coupled with all of that, and the knowledge that teachers have already with the iPads and the educational advantages, I do.
And the last question I have, principals, are you on board with this trial?
I'm on board because of the people that I would have piloted, that I've had the discussions with, done the background work. Because I know there are the concerns that it just becomes a new gadget that doesn't impact the learning process. So our discussions have been, all right, let's see, you have that instructional tool, how are you going to utilize it for instruction? And they're quick to the answers. And they're bringing in, and they're enthused about the answers as well. To see the enthusiasm and the confidence that they possess, I'm very comfortable with them.
Shirley?
Yes, that's why last year I asked you just if you were interested, and I think it's something Darlene said, as we're looking at learners to engage them more in learning, that is how students are learning, and that is a world that they're coming to us in that way as K-1, 2 students. I told you last time the example of how when they were taking the math test, how they're touching the screen, what they're doing. That is the way they are learning. And Kathy said, coupled with Common Core and what our kids need to learn is pretty high stuff, that the tools that we have to motivate them, I think, is really important. And yes, I'm very on board with it.
One further thing that has taken place in our building is that the teachers, Mrs. Pendleton would be one that would have piloted. Her students go to the McGuanago School District. She's very familiar how they utilize, so she has a network. Sarah Eggers, kindergarten teacher, has a network along with myself in the Greendale School District where they use it. So we utilize our staff here, but it also gives us the opportunity to see what other districts are doing and to see what their successes and problems have been in the past. So it's nice to have that connection.
I think the overall question is our mission to provide iPads for every one of our K-2 students, and what is that cost going to be?
No, that's not the mission. The mission is to increase accessibility, so that's why we projected 5 per classroom.
If I could follow, is the administration in favor of moving forward with this pilot program?
Yes.
And will you, administration, you can be able to set up something to measure the success of the pilot?
I'll work with Kathy, and we'll take a look at data, and
Doug, you have anyone?
I can see, you know, and I'm not the one for technology, but I can see this, especially with the younger kids, on how they're learning before they ever come to the schools. And this would be just taking place at the old computers that are in the breakout areas now. You know, the way I look at it is, you look at what they have at home, and when they start school, they're actually going to be going backwards.
Yeah, stop.
We won't go there.
We'll stay with this group.
I won't go on my soapbox.
The other thing I would add is I hope we can use the assessment tools we're already giving students to measure that. I don't want to see that we're giving more tests to students. We already have the running records, the map assessment, paths. I want to see our time used for instruction so we can see that growth also.
Very
So
good, yes.
be cautious of that when we make that comment.
Okay. Anybody, anything else on that? Anything else?
I think I could let my voice know
Yeah,
my
yeah.
understanding.
And I hear you, what I really would like to
And
see.
Paul said some very good points.
Very good, yeah, very
I
good
mean, but
question.
Stacy, my thoughts on this are is if this is a pilot program to try these out in this room, I do not want to see that room using those breakout computers. Because the intent here is to get rid of the breakout computers. If in the future we buy more of these for each one of those classes that are down there, there's no purpose to have the breakout computers in the K through 2.
We're still waiting for a report from the middle school of the effectiveness of the one-on-one program.
Okay. We'll bring it up in a second, but does that work?
Would
In
they
your
be
thought of
used
where you're
for
going.
different purposes?
Well, that's the question. If you're doing some kind of testing on the breakout computer,
I think that's a good hypothesis to put out there. If one has this, do they need to use this? So I think those are some good things that you want to work on in this process of figuring out, can you get by in your room with these 5? Can they do all that you need to do? And yeah, I think that's a fair question to
because,
ask.
I mean, the things I've seen with students were all.
I don't want to say no, you can't
they're
go
on
out there.
apps for-
We're going to spend $41,000 for this pilot program. What's the inclusive program going to be? Is this
About
all-
72.
About 72,000 more
No.
total?
If we were to go K2 every classroom, it would have been around 72,000. But that's also with all those extras that Dan had concerns about, so I would have to go back to the chart.
Not sure what extras I have concerns about.
No, the-
Formation.
No, remember the extra computers and stuff?
Structure.
The extra teacher
All
ones.
Yes,
Say,
yes, yeah,
Air Max.
yeah.
Yeah, right now I'd rather see us not utilize the Air Max and see how the device by itself is going to do. I don't see having an Air Max as a necessity at this point. I'd rather have more iPads for the students.
So divert that cost to more devices then?
How it comes out number-wise. Would you rather see that?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
We
I
can
would
figure
say
it out.
that, yeah, but you do need supervisory one. You do need the charging card.
Yeah.
And that works them all together so the supervisor can take care of it, right? And it charges them. So I don't see an issue with those. I just don't want to have a bunch more Air Max that run.
So Paul, are you asking that if the cost was feasible, you'd go with all of them?
I'm saying that 41,000 is a big dollar amount for a pilot program. It seems like a large dollar to try something. You know, all I'm saying is that, you know, the taxpayers are going to be looking at, oh, now the district's buying iPads for all these kids. Now, it's not, you're saying it's not for every student, it's for a group of devices per classroom. It's still a lot of money. And we started on that route with the one-on-ones, and then I was hearing some things from Mr. Yoke saying, boy, we're spending a lot of money on computers. We can't continue to do that every year and every year. You know, at some point you have to either say, the students that choose to have these, maybe their parents provide them. The students that are, you know, are we, you know, looking for somewhere that is already using them and shown to be effective? I'm just saying, it's a lot of money. It's a whole lot of money, and we got more money that would be spent. And I'd like to have some confidence that this is going to be truly beneficial for the students and not a continuing tax burden for the taxpayers.
Understandable. All right, so what I hear then is, so currently we had 41 listed down with Air Max in there. We had 51 originally budgeted for, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if you put the 41 and get rid of Air Max and buy a few more iPads, maybe you buy 6 per week or something.
Or more classrooms.
Or more classrooms.
You know what I'm saying?
So my question is then, are you in favor of moving forward in that?
I still haven't heard that, here's what we're gonna use it for, here's districts where we're gonna model it from, I'm not hearing any of that, so no, I'm not in favor of it. I will put it to the full board, you know, you can choose to do that.
All right.
I'm not in favor of it, I'm not hearing that
I understand.
there's a plan.
I understand completely. So I would say I'd be in favor of pushing it back to the board with the contingency that we try to not utilize the outside computers, or at least that's a bigger reason why they would have needed those, because what I don't want to do is have everybody with iPads in their rooms, plus all these other computers we have to take care of.
Just gotta keep in mind with Common Core standards, the writing piece, for especially second graders, we're trying to get them more, get that full-blown typing longer. So I mean, I don't want to just say we're getting rid of those and handcuff them by any chance.
Right, but we do have labs at each one of the other two buildings.
We do, absolutely.
In fact,
Take a
all
look
of
at
them
this
have
guy.
lab,
They do.
right? So they could take the students down there for keyboarding class.
And they do, absolutely, but I just,
Okay, because it sure would be nice to hear from this
Yeah.
a year from now, and let's put that as contingency, we're reviewing this 1 year from now, or whenever the program starts, to see how they were utilized and progress and use of them, and if the diminished use of the other PCs relegates us to saying, let's scrap the other PCs and replace everything with iPads in those lower grades. So I'll move that to the full board, let the board decide on that.
I would just like to ask one more question, Ken. Do you think we would be foolish to overrule the Mac Air and get more iPads?
I honestly can't, I haven't seen the Mac Airs in action, so I can't say that would be foolish in that regard. It would be it would be a nice added piece, but I can't say that would be foolish in avoiding it.
And the other thing is the other Mac, you could actually use that if somebody really wanted to publish something. You can use that supervisory unit, because what else is that going to do other than sit waiting for use? So there's always that possibility we've got that as well, if somebody's really insistent about putting something out there.
And you got one per building, the Mac Airs.
Right now it's slated as one, but there's thing,
Yeah.
maybe take that out.
Yeah, we're saying, because you have the one supervisory
yeah.
Mac Pro, right?
Yes.
Right, so somebody could utilize that if they want to publish something. In fact, I would encourage somebody to utilize that, because the majority of the time they'll sit there collecting data. So we'll put it to full board at the next meeting.
Are you looking at the 41 or 51,000?
I was looking at 41.
Say that again.
I said then when I go down to the 36.9 without,
I don't have the numbers in front of me.
okay.
Yeah, the more interesting question will be is, I like a beat for your iPad. We're still working on an iPad 1 at our house. They're working great, no issues at all, no cracked screens, and again, we're not kindergarten through second graders, but you're talking 4 years maybe on an iPad 1.
Sure.
So the question will be, which iPad are you choosing? You want to go down to an iPad Air, which is such a little minute thing with very little backbone to it. If the kid drops that thing, it could bite the dust. Or would you rather go iPad 4, which has much bigger backing to it?
Which model?
These are iPad 4s that are on this.
Okay. I mean, I would even think an iPad 3 or iPad 2 would be more glorious for what our needs are. I mean, if you could lower the costing out and get an iPad 3, you can still buy those versions, you know?
You know, with any portable device, you're dealing with batteries.
Correct.
And, you know, we've run into this with the laptops, and
But these things go back to the charging cartridge and done, right?
I have an iPod, and it's becoming worthless because the battery life has gone down on it.
I don't know, the iPad, my wife's got it 4 or 5 years old, still rolling along, did a good 8, 10 hours, 2, 3 days before you plug it in.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, well, we'll see how these last out.